I was on holiday for 3 games. 3 games, yes. I missed. Okay. And the other thing that those 3 games have in common for the Cowboys is they were 3 in a row 100-yard games for CeeDee Lamb.
Damn right.
At the beginning of the season, we spent like half the season talking about, well, when was his last 100-yard game? And you got to go back to, what was it, Minnesota in 2021 or something crazy like that. I was comfortable before Christmas, before I left, saying he had joined the ranks of maybe the top 10 or best 12 wide receivers. But with production like this, what do you attribute it to, number one? But he now is heading for the conversation in the top 5 wide receivers in the game of football with production like we've seen over the last 3 games. I mean, and we've seen some stupid catches, some stupid halves of football where has like 9 catches at half, things like this. So, I mean, here's my top 6, and I'm fairly comfortable saying CeeDee's not going to crack this year, but maybe at some point next year, if this is a breakout and then a follow-through. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs. Those are my top 6 wide receivers. I don't think CeeDee's in that group right now. I think he's like with A.J. Brown and Jalen Waddle and looking to join that Elite 6. But what do you guys think about this breakout, his place among the best wide receivers in the game right now?
I mean, it's a conversation to be had this year. He's played like a top 5 receiver, which is kind of shocking. When you initially kind of teased this, I was thinking there's no way that he's going to even be, we can even really have this debate that he's in the top 5. But he's 4th in catches. He's 3rd in yards. And touchdown. I mean, he's 3rd in 20-plus yard catches down the field. He's
balling.
He's got 8 touchdowns on the year. I mean, every statistical category, he's near the top. The touchdowns are where there's the fall off, right? So your leader is Adams with 14. Then you got Brown with 11, who's got the second most, and then Diggs with 10. But, yeah, I'm with you. I'd put all 6 of those guys ahead of CeeDee Lamb, but he's definitely entered the top 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to think Lamb probably has at least 1, if not 2 or 3 more had Dak played all season in terms of touchdowns.
Absolutely.
Like, that's something that has to be factored in as well, where for the first month plus of the season, you're dealing with a quarterback that was doing an admirable job, but not in the way that top flight quarterbacks like a Dak Prescott is going to do to enhance these numbers. So just to be fair there. But yes, CeeDee Lamb has been a super stud. And one of the things that you love about CeeDee Lamb is the versatility that he brings in terms of not knowing where he's going to line up. And I know a lot of these other top flight receivers have that as well, but CeeDee Lamb, at least coming into this past week's game, you're talking about first in big plays from the slot. From the slot position, hey, first in big plays, second in first downs, third in total receiving yards out of the slot. But he also plays on the outside as well. A lot of it is credit to Kellen Moore, and it's a little bit late to the party, but welcome to it, is getting him moving around and getting him in motion. We talked about this plenty, where for a good chunk of this season, from receivers being in motion, CeeDee Lamb was number 1 in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. Hey, when you create good matchups, this dude can take advantage of them here. So get him in motion, allow him to play in the slot, allow him to play on the edge. Here's a couple of jet sweeps as well to add to the versatility. But next-gen stats, CeeDee Lamb has caught more targets than expected for the 9th time in his last 10 games. So they have completion percentage over expected for quarterbacks. You have receptions over expected for wide receivers. And now for the 9th time in 10 games, CeeDee Lamb has gone over his expected receptions and targets. And so that's something that is hugely encouraging as well. So he's been a stud.
Man, that there's so many stats you guys are throwing at us that are like top 3, top 2, top 1. I don't know, like the text says, what about Mike Evans? And I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I guess I should have my top 7 wide receivers.
Well, that's
Mike Evans is amazing.
We're in the golden age of receivers.
No, there's tons of good receivers, but the issue with Mike Evans is, he just had a 3-touchdown game, but how consistent is that? I think CeeDee Lamb's body of work is more consistent than Mike Evans is week in and week out right now at the stage in both of their careers.
Mike Evans has just had such an amazing career, and maybe he's past his prime. Right, but I'm giving him a huge body of work
100%.
component.
But, I mean, are we talking right now, or are we going resume? So,
Sure.
I mean, right now, today, I think CeeDee Lamb is kind of surpassing Mike Evans. And Brian, I think another area is Yak. Yards after catch. That is somewhere that he excelled at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That was a special area in his game. He's 8th in the NFL among wide receivers in yards after reception this year. And that was something that I think he struggled at, being able to break tackles and make sure he's able to extend plays and be explosive. He's been fantastic in that area this year.
Yeah, I think the thing with Mike Evans is 68% of the time CeeDee Lamb is going to catch the ball. Mike Evans is right around 60. So when you start to talk about targets and receptions and stuff like that, another big thing that puts CeeDee in all the great numbers you guys are mentioning, he's top 5 in converting third downs and making receptions turn into first downs.
Yeah.
So that's something when you start to talk about clutch with your receivers. So of all the guys, I mean, the targets, he was on a pace for a huge number of targets. But if you look at the targets around the top guys you were talking about, it's all very similar. Hill at Miami's killing everybody on targets right now. But when I'm looking at how many times is this guy going to catch the ball? How many times is he going to get me a first down? He's right in the mix with all those guys that you're talking about.
The guy we're forgetting probably, DeAndre Hopkins, who got texted in. And DeAndre Hopkins, who was suspended
he missed
this year.
6 games, right?
Hopkins is still special.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm fighting a sneeze.
You're all good.
Okay. All right. I think I've denied it. I think I rejected that sneeze.
Wow, bro.
Into the third row.
That's incredible.
Okay, Lamb was also screwed out of a touchdown against the Giants when he got both toes down in the back of the end zone.
Oh, bro. Or it was the heel, right? Wasn't it the toe and then the heel?
Well, that's the thing. The rule is, you got to go.
Bull.
Heel toe is what you got to do.
We've talked about CeeDee Lamb over the last couple of weeks as well, and I do want to mention that brought up last week about the idea how many interceptions are on CeeDee Lamb with these miscommunications. If you're really splitting hairs about what the whole body of work for CeeDee Lamb this year, you do have to mention that. And it does seem like something that's since been cleaned up. But there was that stretch for a couple of weeks where it's like, are him and Dak on the same page? And is that on you, CeeDee Lamb? Is that on you, Dak?
I think
whatever.
We all watch a lot of football, but I'd like to know of the top receivers, how many of those receivers are responsible for turnovers.
Right.
That's what I'd like to know too.
Well.
Just as part of the body of work for evaluating.
Yeah, we don't notice that about other teams' players quite as much. Cheech, it also seems CeeDee has put the drops behind him. I think that's a good point as well. There's been a huge step up. Another texter mentioned maybe hanging out with the other 88s has had an impact on him. I think taking away Amari Cooper was big because the responsibility goes on him to be the number one. I think the struggles of early in the season, but also since the Cowboys drafted him, or for some people even before the Cowboys drafted him, we've always heard about his work ethic and his perfectionism. And if something's not working, he's going to obsess and work around it until he produces. And it's not that common anymore that receivers are taking into their third year before they have a breakout into legit stardom. So I was starting to get worried, but I did have faith that the talent was still there. And now that we're seeing it, I think, you go into the next level of the conversation, which is how do you approach this contract if you're the Cowboys? He's going to be eligible for a new one coming up in March. And I find this fascinating because two different teams this past offseason decided the price at wide receiver got too high. Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, who ended up getting $30 and $28 million. Chiefs and Packers said no thank you. So if teams like that are going to say no thank you, and we know how the Cowboys negotiate these deals, maybe we should be getting ready for like 2 years of battling this thing out. The market value says put Lamb around 26, 27 million bucks. If I'm the Cowboys, I just go in and talk to his agent and say, let's get this done. He's not the best. He's, at least worth 25 million. How about we call it 27.5, 28? Let's just flush the next 2 years of this playing out in the media. The thing is, it makes sense to me, but the Cowboys don't mind the negotiations. I think they kind of like it.
Jerry lives for it.
Yeah. So I don't think it's how they're going to play it out, but that's what's fair, right? What's fair is about 27 or 28 million bucks over a 5-year deal with 3 or 4 years guaranteed.
Yeah, and it is fair to say when you talk about the idea that you are in the golden age of wide receivers, that you can consistently find good, young, cheap labor at the wide receiver position in the draft all the time.
Yeah.
Brian, we've watched a lot already.
Yeah.
This is a pretty damn good class.
And we've been saying that now for the last, 2 or 3 drafts where it's like
3 or 4, yeah.
dominant receiver class.
Since
And
Gallup came in.
That's where the sport has gone. And so all your best athletes, if they're not playing quarterback, it's not running back anymore. Let's just go be a receiver, and we'll be a beast that way. So that is going to be a negotiating tactic for sure. But if you feel like you got a bona fide top 5 to top 8 receiver in the sport, is it worth paying top flight guys? Like, yeah, I can go get solid players, but isn't it nice to have a bona fide beast? And if that's what you deem CeeDee Lamb to be, then there is a discussion to be had.
Well,
here.
and from a Cowboys standpoint, where that's their MO, right? They draft, they develop, they want to keep.
He's
their own.
88. Yeah, you don't let that guy go.
Cowboys are all about that. They're going to want to keep CeeDee Lamb. They want to keep him to be a Dallas Cowboy, but there certainly are a lot of guys this year that if you're interested in adding another wide receiver, and they might need a second option, there's some good options for you.
Yeah, I think you do both. But that's really interesting because if Devontae Adams isn't worth 28 or Tyreek Hill isn't worth 30, where do you go with CeeDee Lamb?
All older guys, too, by the way. Those guys are all 29, 30, 31 years old.
And who's to say they're not worth it? Because Miami will tell you Tyreek Hill's worth it. And the Vegas Raiders right now, I guess I don't know what they would say. But
Kansas City's still in position to be the number 1 seed. The Packers have won 4 in a row and have figured it out with Christian Watson.
Took them a while, but you have 2 GOAT quarterbacks. It helps when you have GOAT quarterbacks.
And I think the Packers did want Devontae Adams. He just didn't want to be in Green Bay.
Yeah, and that's another fair point as well. And do you say, okay, I want one of these super beast bona fide studs, and then I'm not paying the Gallups.
Yeah.
I'm not giving the money to the Gallups. I'll pay you if I think you're top 5, top 10. I want my number 1, and then I'll just rotate through 2s, 3s, and 4s all the time with cheap labor, and I'm not giving you Michael Gallup that random contract, that kind of thing.
I like that. You need that number 1 to dictate the coverage, just get you double coverage.
Absolutely.
Open things up for other guys. Okay. What do you got, Brian?
Well, I'm just kind of looking at these receivers in that draft class, too. Because now
CD came out.
And then you got Justin Jefferson in that draft class too.
Sure.
So all of a sudden now, are you dealing with teams that are teams going to beat you to sign in their guys, and then you're going to have to spend more money?
Yeah, getting the.
I mean, probably the only one though. Don't you think?
What's that?
Is Jefferson the only one?
Chase. Where's Chase? Is Chase a year later?
Chase is a year later.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. They're all kind of in that same.
You're right.
So if you wait a year and you're going into year 5 now, Chase could get done. And
it always behooves you, to your point, Gavin, to be a year ahead of it.
I do think there are numbers at positions where it's like, okay, this is now taking away from our chances of winning the Super Bowl. Even if they're the best players, even if the market says the last 3 guys at this position that were this good got this. There is a law of diminishing return where you're hurting your chances at the Super Bowl, and it'd be much better to spread that money over like 6 guys about as good as J-Ron Curse instead of 1 guy as good as CeeDee Lamb. And that's the economics of team building that you want the Cowboys to be all over.
So looking at the team building aspect of this, who else did you get in that draft class? Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah.
You're going to have to pay Trayvon Diggs, and his contract's going to be up a year sooner than CeeDee's is because you don't have a 5th-year option on Diggs because he was a 2nd-round pick.
Oh, that's a good point.
And what's harder to get, a legit cornerback one or another wide receiver?
Corner for sure.
Yeah, corner is, there's only like 15 good ones.
I mean, those are 2 guys you need to keep.
No doubt about it.
But from the Cowboys standpoint, who do you want to get done first?
Okay, so the other thing, is there correlation or causation? This is my final branch on this topic tree. CeeDee Lamb erupting here in the second half of the season. Dak, I'm going to remain aggressive, right? Are these the things? Like, can you get this level of production without the interceptions? That has to be the goal over the next couple of years between these 2 guys, right?
Yeah, I think that's certainly the goal, and I think it's achievable. You're not going to just go through games consistently without any interceptions, but the multiple in these games, I think you absolutely can reduce it. And we've seen, if you go pick apart all these interceptions, how many of them are just kind of fluky that you wouldn't really predict moving forward. I still trust Dak to ultimately not be a league leader in these interception categories. I feel like these last however many weeks are more of an outlier than anything.
I agree, and you've seen him get it figured out in games, which is what's maddening about it. He has the issue where he just isn't able to elevate that ball ahead of Josh Sweat against Philadelphia, and then he just plays out of his mind the remainder of that football game. You don't have another turnover. But then you have the fluky Hendershot bounce off interception against Tennessee, and then he comes back and has the force behind Dalton Schultz interception against the Titans. So, I mean, there is some Jekyll and Hyde going on, but overall, I think Dak's playing really high-level football for you.